So, hello, folks. It's Thursday, December 29th, 2022. Wow, it's almost the new year, and the last few years have just kind of felt like a blur or a flash. It's just gone by very quickly. But in today's video, I'm going to talk about just a few predictions, specifically three of them that I have for 2023 coming up. So, let's dive into it. So the first one, which is of no surprise, is the economy slash a coming recession and or economic crash. And to be honest, over the last few years, with the way the government here in Canada has handled things, and frankly, a lot of governments in the world, I don't really trust these idiots and these morons in power to handle this coming crash very well. And I mean, if it's not handled properly, we can very well end up in something like another Great Depression or a depression, which would be absolutely terrible. But what's interesting is the stock market right now is basically at the same level it was at before the crash of 1929. I was watching another YouTuber's video like last week, and he showed a chart showing this, and I thought it was really interesting. And it seems like there is a buildup for about 3 years before a market tends to bottom out or it crashes. Because if you look at the history of the buildup to the 1929 crash, which led to the Great Depression and going into the 1930s, there was a buildup for about 3 years before that bottomed out. And that day, Black Tuesday or Black Thursday, whatever they call it, that was just the day that the market officially bottomed out. But there was a huge buildup, as I said, for about 3 years before that, which is interesting. And we're almost getting to that point of 3 years from, when the stock market and things started going all wacky in 2020, in early 2020. Inflation is set to continue to rise. For example, food is set to go up another 5 to 7% this year. It's being said, and that just is, depends upon really what happens. That's if everything stays stable enough in the world with war and natural disasters and droughts and stuff like that. So I expect that it's going to probably go up a lot more than that, just because of everything going on in the world right now. Um, Interest rates also continue to go up, which isn't helping the economy as well. But basically, if the Bank of Canada and if the government doesn't raise interest rates, we risk hyperinflation, something to that degree happening. But yet again, if they do raise rates, we're going to have an economic downturn, which is basically happening right now. They're raising interest rates more to try and keep up with inflation, but it's starting to cause that economic downturn. But overall, nobody's a futurist. Nobody could predict the future completely and when a crash is going to happen. But I really don't see any later than by March or April of this year coming up, or early to mid Q2 of this year. But moving on, my second prediction here is, more war breaking out. So the Ukraine-Russia war, to begin with that, because that's really the big conflict going on right now. It's already escalating a lot. The U.S. has sent all kind of weapons already, and they keep sending more and more weapons of all kinds to Ukraine. There's U.S. troops on the ground already, folks. NATO commanders are leading operations as well. In Ukraine. And, this is just a big mission creep where they kind of do one thing and then they wait a bit, then they do another, then they do another, then they do another, and then eventually they're completely involved in the conflict. And this war is already beyond the borders of Ukraine. The U.S. basically gave the okay for Ukraine to strike air bases in Russia, like their nuclear triad. And some of these air bases had nuclear missiles at them, too. And one of them was pretty close to Moscow. So this war is already beyond the borders of Ukraine for sure. Just 1 second here. And right now, with their offensive, they're planning on a big military mobilization. Russia. It's just been warmer than usual temperatures in Europe at the moment, so the ground hasn't really been stable enough or been frozen enough for them to mobilize. So I think that's the reason why this still has not commenced yet, but it's definitely coming sometime early this year, where this war is going to ramp up a lot more. And I mean, yet again, going back to Zelensky's speech to the U.S. Congress, if that doesn't show you guys and show the whole world like how committed the U.S. is and NATO to going to war with Russia, I don't know what else will. I mean, that was a pretty significant event that happened there as well. But moving on, China and Taiwan, like you have that conflict brewing up as well. It's being said that it's the biggest buildup since World War II in the South China Sea. I mean, China's starting to surround Taiwan more with a naval blockade. I mean, they're not completely blocking things off, but they're starting to put more and more presence being built up there. And what's interesting is Japan is also investing in their biggest military buildup since World War II, which would apparently make them the third biggest spender behind the U.S. and China. And, Japan hasn't been a significant military power since World War II. And we're seeing other countries like Germany trying to build up more, and even Poland wants to be one of the most powerful militaries in Europe as well. And they're looking to build their forces as well. And an interesting proposal I have to say here is would China potentially invade the Philippines as well? I've kind of hear this theory going around, and I thought about it myself when I looked at a map of the South China Sea, and to me, it would actually make more sense for them to invade the Philippines instead of Taiwan, because it would actually give them more control in the South China Sea and more security than taking Taiwan would. And if they were to invade Taiwan, it would completely mess up the Taiwan Strait. And there's so much trade that goes through there, like $3 trillion worth of trade, that it would absolutely mangle their economy. So to me, not only for more security sense to invade the Philippines, it also wouldn't harm their economy as much as well. Just some food for thought. And overall, yeah, I think China will make a move this year in one way or another. Like, it's going to happen. And some analysts I've listened to that know more about this than me have said they don't see China invading Taiwan, or as I said, it could be another move no later than the spring. Another conflict brewing up is North and South Korea. Recently, there's been drones being flown around or being flown by North Korea into South Korean airspace, which is kind of alarming. But overall, like, this conflict's been going on for a long time. The Korean War never really ended completely at the end of the day. There was never a truce or a peace agreement. So technically, the war is still ongoing to this day. It's just there's been no direct fighting. And at the end of the day, I don't have too much to say about this besides that North Korea is supplying Russia with arms already. So that's another country that's involved in this conflict as well, to some degree already. And North Korea is really at the bark and call of China. Like, they're basically just a puppet state of China, and they're going to do what China wants them to do at the end of the day. So, yeah. Moving on from that, you have the Middle East conflict brewing up. Like, there's a lot of tensions brewing up between the U.S. and Israel and Iran. And the thing is, if war breaks out there, gas prices are going to skyrocket like crazy because of the Strait of Hormuz. Like, Iran controls and owns a lot of, at least half of the Strait of Hormuz, and I think Saudi Arabia controls the other half of it. But they would basically cut off all oil coming through there, and it would just cause an absolute disaster economically worldwide. And what's interesting is Ukraine is starting to target Iran more. Like, I don't think they're striking them or anything, but they're starting to call them out more and kind of starting to beef with Iran more. And I mean, you have this situation where you have the U.S. and NATO supplying Ukraine, but then on the other side, you have Iran supplying drones to Russia. And then, as I said, you have North Korea supplying arms to Russia as well. So, I mean, like, all these other countries are already getting involved, and this is really a war of resources, folks. I mean, with energy and the pipelines and all that kind of stuff to Europe. So, I mean, there's a much bigger picture here overall to this war. And yes, I do believe World War III has already started, unfortunately, and I think this is going to be the year where you're going to see some crazy things break out and the conflict will get a lot worse. That's just my overall prediction here in terms of the war front in the world right now. And my last prediction for the year, I want to try to leave on a little bit more of a positive note. Like, this isn't anything too crazy, but I'm hoping maybe this year in our society here in Canada and around the world, hopefully we find some kind of revelation in these pivotal times in the darkness. Like, these potential hard times ahead coming in the next year, hopefully it could bring us more together as a nation and as a community and regain that sense of community and people helping out each other more and just people being more thankful for what they have, including myself. And hopefully it's more of a wake-up call for a lot of people to what's going on in the world. I mean, I think most of you realize out there that the world's in a bad state right now and going in a very dangerous direction, but hopefully it'll wake more people up as well. And just a recent example that I saw a lot of good things happening in a harder time. Was this recent winter storm as an example, like people helping out their neighbors or people taking people in. Like there was a really nice story I heard about in Buffalo. Some lady took like this mentally ill guy. Or I don't know if he was mentally ill or he just had a mental condition or something. He's like 64 years old. This lady took him into her home and such and cared for her. And it was a really nice story. And then eventually, I guess the guy's sister ended up locating her. And the guy was all frostbitten and everything. And he was almost going to freeze to death. And this lady took him in and as I said, helped the guy out and got him back to where he needed to be. So that's just an example. Hopefully, we could see more of stuff like that, down the road when hard times arise more. And that's what I'm hoping will happen this year more in our society on a more positive note. But anyways, folks, that's about all I have to say. And peace out.